Hello YouTube and welcome to the Citizen community. As this idea has been floated by CIG again, I wanted to explain why the quantity of gathered elements does not inform the quality of the refined element. Now, there already exists a spectrum thread regarding this that goes into the details a little more, where someone may contribute. I put the link in the description below. Now, first of all, let me get into the difference between an element and a material. And the difference is an element is made of one type of atom, while materials are composed of different atoms. A material can be anything, while an element is composed of only one type of atom. Now, to the process of refining. Let's take, for example, iron. Now, iron is found in iron ore. That's why it's called iron ore. And iron ores consist of some oxidized iron, which, for example, could be rust, and a lot of other stuff like dirt and so on. So, here an example. As you can see, that's the stuff like rust. In that case, obviously it's not rust, it's, for example, magnetite or hematite, and it has some parts of iron in it. In this case, if there's magnetite, it has 72% of iron in it. And that's the highest you can find in nature. However, obviously, if you find a big vein of magnetite and stuff, there's also always other things in there, impurities. Therefore, the purest industrially usable ore deposits still are below 70% of iron. Even to the point where for refineries like blast furnaces, it's okay to feed them ores, so dirt and some iron, with like a percentage of 60% of iron in it. That's very, very pure already. Now, as you can see, if you have in an ore 60% iron, that's really not usable like that for any tools, right? So in order to use iron, or to be able to use iron at all, you need to refine it. And this has been done for a very long time already. The second millennium before Christ already. That's like 4,000 years ago. So in order to use iron, you need to refine it. Now, what are the steps for that? First step is that you have pig iron. That is very dirty iron that's already gone through some kind of crude manufacturing, or like a very pure deposit that's come directly from the earth. What people have done then is, for example, they use a finery forge where that iron got decarburized. So effectively, you get rid of the impurities, you get rid of the additional carbon that you don't want. That's too much, because otherwise the iron is brittle. Then, obviously, only very few people have something like an iron pan at home, and you don't drive with cars made of iron, right? So you guys know steel. Now, what is steel? Steel, in small quantities, has been produced, very small quantities by the way, has been produced for a long time already. However, only since like mid-19th century, it's been used in a more industrial capacity with the Bessemer process. Now, what is steel? Steel is iron with a very precise amount of carbon in it. And there's more modern ways to produce steel in industrial capacity, which would be, for example, open hearth furnaces. That's modern type steel. So, what do we learn from that? Even the purest of irons that we can get from the ground still can't be properly used for making anything useful out of it. All the iron that you want to use has to be refined. Therefore, Even the worst iron can produce the best steel if it's just refined well enough. And that leads us back to the original thought that CIG wants to do of informing the quality of the later element from the ore that you are mining. But there is no connection there. If there were a connection, we wouldn't have a modern society. We wouldn't have had an industrialization and everything. Because the iron that you find in nature is so impure that the only way to use it is to be able to completely clean it of all the stuff you don't want. Now, I wanted to emphasize that again, but I already did now. Like, as humans, we are using that for thousands of years already. We very well know how to do these kind of things. For about 200 years now, we're even able to not only first clean the iron, but then add a very precise amount of carbon into the iron to make steel. And for about 100 years now, we're even able to go beyond this. So we're able to even separate isotopes. You may have heard about enrichment, for example, the enrichment of uranium, and the different isotopes have the same chemical and physical properties. It makes a difference in, for example, the radioactivity of the thing, but for its production value, it has none. Nonetheless, I wanted to emphasize we're even able to do that. Going back to the process of mining different quality ores, right? You're supposed to, in Star Citizen now, you're supposed to be mining bad quality iron or good quality iron. Yeah, coming back to this here, we are separating different elements such as iron for so long now. It is easy. It doesn't matter. And I really think that 900 years into the future, we probably haven't lost that. Different qualities of elements must not have an effect on the final product. Now, let's generalize that. Same principles as for iron hold true for every element. Remember in the beginning I said an element is a material comprised of only one atom, right? This is the table or the periodic table of elements. Every element you see there can clean them of any impurities. However, there is an important distinction to make here. Everything that's grown, for example, is not covered by this, right? So while I'm saying the quality of an ore node that you mine does not inform the quality of the element that comes out of it, while that is true for elements, anything that is grown, for example, a plant that's grown out of here carbon, oxygen, and whatnot, you have it here. Well, you can't do it with that, right? Because a refinement will completely destroy the thing. So everything that's grown is not covered by what I'm arguing here. So back to Star Citizen. Now, as this is a game, obviously you want to gamify it. And when you gamify something, you ask, what incentive does something give to something else? What incentive does this mechanic give to the players? What drawbacks do I have from this maybe? And what do I make more interesting? What do I make more boring? So now one might think that if I can take the impurest of iron and get the and can make it into clean iron, that it would take the incentive for someone to go to a different place to mine it. Now, let's think about that for a moment. What would be my incentive, for example, to go from Stanton to Pyro in order to mine iron rather there? Let's say in Stanton there's, well, very impure iron, and Pyro that there's very pure iron. And the incentive could be, well, more pure iron makes the refinement easier. Even in a real-life application, you don't have to create pig iron in a blast furnace. If you, for example, can get a hematite or magnetite and put it directly into, well, your Bessemer process, there, right? So it reduces, for example, the time you need to refine the material. It may reduce any additional material usage you have for it, maybe less wear and tear. Also, it definitely reduces the costs for refining it, because, well, your refinery, if you're on a ship, probably uses H fuel, right? And if it uses less H fuel, it's cheaper for you. That's one thing. Next thing is, maybe some ores in Pyro, like I said, are more common than in Stanton. And maybe they are so rare in Stanton that it isn't even worth searching for them. So if I want a certain ore, I have to go to another star system. Also, like I already said, maybe the deposits are so pure they can be used without even refining it. And maybe the objects produced from that unrefined ore are in a very bad quality, but you might be able to produce them extremely cheap or in high quality quantities. Also, another step of the gamification, or another opportunity for the gamification, would be more gameplay loops, more gameplay opportunities. First of all, the operation itself may become more complex. Then the fuel or material supply for the refining process adds another game loop. Also, maybe you might want to upgrade your refinery. Let's say you have an Arastra, and maybe by default it can only produce ores of a quality of maybe 90% purity or something. I know it would be quite low, to be fair, but just as an example. And maybe you might want to upgrade your Arastra, put some tweaks into it and whatever to make it able to refine up to 100% quality or purity. And as is a game, next thing we have to look at is programming convenience. At first glance, you might think, oh, adding this additional step, Clyde, that's difficult. Or that looks like elements need a special treatment. But that's not the case. At second glance, if you think about it. Because you can actually use just the same system. CIG wants to add resource nodes that have a quality attached to them. So can have a resource node, like a tree, that has a quality. And you can have an ore node that also has the same attribute. Now, what it could do is, like the ore node, let's say iron node, when you mine it, the quality of the iron informs the refinery how difficult it is or how long it takes to refine that iron ore into pure iron. And then after that, the refinery sets the quality or the purity of that iron to 100%. So the refinery could just make a cut into that line from the resource node to the final product and say, okay, my quality of this iron is now so and such. This way, the same system, the same attributes could be used over all resource nodes, all the resources, and yet there would be place and actual correctness, I would say, for refineries. And right, so in addition to that, there's another nice thing, because once you have established the process of making a cut into the line of quality information transition, so once you have made a cut into that process and say, okay, we can stop the quality here and set a different quality thanks to refinery, you can add any material the developers want into that. If the developers want a certain material to be able to be refined, well, they can allow that material. Or if they want a special material not to be refined, for example, a very complex crystal structure, for example, then they might not allow it. Well, because if you want to have a certain crystal, you might want to go and harvest that. And maybe you can't grow that in a lab. Not yet. I mean, for example, diamonds, that's not so long ago that we were able to artificially create diamonds, but until then, the techniques to us were unknown. Or it adds the opportunity, like I said, that players might forego the refining process at their own peril and just roll with the consequences of using very crappy iron in the product. Again, iron here is an example that goes for any element. Okay, I think I covered with that all the stuff I wanted to touch. So thank you everyone for watching. I hope I could, at least to a certain point, explain why the quality of an initial element does not inform the quality of the refined product. In short, because the quality of the initial element is usually so bad that you can't even use it, and only the quality of refinery informs, well, what comes out of the refinery. With that, thank you everyone for watching. Please leave me likes and subscribes, or don't. And yeah, I hope you guys participate in the thread and the discussion. Thank you everyone. See you in the verse. Bye bye.